Hello, everyone. Today on the Founders Code podcast, my guest is a founder and general manager at Factorform. In her spare time, she advises and invests into startups, as well as writes a thoughtful blog about tech, product, and the psychology of work. Please welcome Loughran.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Shamil. I'm really excited to be here.
Likewise, great to have you. Can you give us an intro about what you do at Factorform?
Sure. So at Factorform is a supplement company. We create thoughtfully formulated supplements that are clinically backed, use real food, whole food ingredients, and have proven efficacious results. And at Factorform, I run the whole business. So I oversee everything from growth and marketing to operations to product formulation, everything that it takes to run a supplement business. But of course, it's not me alone. I have a wonderful team who supports me in all of these different domains in order to make the business work.
Fantastic. And we'll get to that to go a little bit deeper as well. To start off, to have a good understanding of who Laura is, could you talk us through your upbringing?
Happy to. Yeah. I grew up in New Jersey, great state. I feel like it gets a bad rep, but can only say good things about growing up there. And as a kid, I was very competitive, very intense, very sporty. I was mainly a swimmer. That was my main sport. I swam in college, but I also did every other sport under the sun. And I think having that balance between academic and athletic was really important for me as a kid to be able to try different things, build different skills. If something wasn't going well in one class, I could be successful on the field, things like that. So I always encourage young people, it doesn't have to be sports, but pursue your passions, whatever they are, outside of just academics, because it will pay dividends down the road.
Was it your own prerogative as a kid? Were you going to your parents like, guys, I want to try this, I want to try this? Or was it like, hi, Laura, you have to try this, we're going to take you there, and you have to perform? Which one was it?
My parents were definitely set a high bar. I think the term that was thrown around in my generation was tiger parents, which is very different than helicopter parents, by the way.
Can you
And
tell us about that?
I would say a tiger parent, which my mother certainly is somebody who's hugely protective of their children and also, just sets a high bar, wants them to achieve things, throws them in everything, encourages their successes, sits with them through their failures, and yeah, just encourages me to be a more dynamic person. A helicopter parent, which I think most people are familiar with the terminology, but if not, somebody who's or a parent who's so protective that they don't let their kids fail at things. I definitely failed at a lot of things along the way, but yeah, I think the curiosity and the willingness to try things that was embedded in me by my parents is something that has really paid off, not just in my career, but in my life as well.
And how did they react to like the failures? For example, if you had a game or you were at a competition and well, you didn't come like first, uh, were they very supportive at those times?
It's such a good question. Okay, I'm being vulnerable here, but that's what this podcast is
Thank
all
you.
about,
Yeah.
right? Just to paint a picture of what I was like as a kid. In my very first ever travel soccer game, which I believe in the States happens around second grade. So how old are you
Mhm.
then? 8, maybe?
Yeah.
Young, super young, right? I remember being so excited. We went to this game, my parents drove me. It was a really big deal to me at the time. And we lost. My team lost. We lost 4-1. I'll never forget the score is burned in my memory forever. And at the end of the game, I was so upset. At the end of the game, you go and you shake hands or you kind of high five the rest of the team or the opposing team.
Because you have to be respectful.
You have to be respectful. Again, be go easy on me here. I remember slapping the hands of the girls as hard as an 8-year-old possibly could, right? And that, that should give you a little insight into
Hmm.
my competitiveness. I did not take failures well as a kid. I think it's something I'm still continuing to learn. But that's part of the fun of it, right?
I oftentimes feel because as many other founders who've come to these podcasts, as some of my friends who are also founders, uh, one of these stories that kind of goes through all of the lines is that we didn't feel like we were enough
Mm,
when we had the failures. We didn't. It was almost like we have to achieve to deserve love from the parents, and we spend our whole lives trying to prove ourselves to kind of like earn that love throughout. We can be 50, 60,
yeah,
still using the same kind of motivational like fire, even though it does serve as like a source of motivation to keep driving, even though like you might not already be trying to prove something to your mom or your dad,
yeah.
but it still works as a kind of like internal source of fuel.
Definitely. I'd be curious, yeah, what about you? Do you have a defining moment yourself as a kid that you think about that is illustrative of who you are and how you've become what you are?
There is one where I was at the judo.
Yeah.
I went to judo when I was little
Hmm.
because in my family, like the guys have to be, going to sports.
Of course.
And in the first match that I get into, and the parents are sitting all around the place,
Okay.
and the first match I lose,
Mm.
and I remember the kind of support that I wanted to be like, hey, dude, don't worry, you're a kid. This is just a competition. You'll get better with time. But it was I was more faced with like silence. Now I can understand it's because the same kind of level of pressure was put on top of my father, and he would
Yep.
never kind of heal from that and be able to uh, act differently. Yeah, but through a lot of times, my father was very controlling and strict. So
Mm.
we always had to perform. Me and my sister, she's a careerist. She like builds careers, and yeah, I've kind of came to terms with using that as a fuel when I saw other people do the same thing. Do you ever feel like you're like with everything that you do, you're still trying to prove yourself?
It's a great question, and it's such a good insight that you've picked up is, this phenomena of almost having a chip on your shoulder. I think when I look back in my career and my life, it's ebbed and flowed. I've had certain times where I've felt, okay, not I've made it necessarily, but I am where I want to be. And then I've had other times where I've felt like I'm ready to brute force whatever it is that I need to in order to get to where I think I should be. Um, I think what's changed over time, not that underlying fire, but the ability to tolerate that space when I'm not where I want to be and not beating yourself up about it every day, being patient and saying, okay, I'm not exactly where I want to be, but I'm going to get there. I'm going to wake up every day and I'm going to work towards it and not be so in the suffering of the day to day, which I think can really take a toll on you.
How did you get through the transformation? Because that's like I'm probably still going through that transformation, and I'm actively going through it because you are suffering, and inside you're basically choosing to suffer. The main thing thought in my head is like, well, you suffering does not change anything, so you could be just having like a good mood as well, and things would be just as shit, as they are otherwise. And that switch. Did you take time to go to get to this point, or are there some rituals that you take to kind of take care of yourself during those times?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm by no means an expert. I think it's an ever evolving target. But yeah, I think the more you go through things, the more data points you have that show you, oh, I do come out the other end. And so the more times you kind of go through that cycle in your life, the more confidence you gain in, okay, I can go through it again. And that gives you peace of, I don't want to say peace of mind because I don't want it to seem like, we're all over here resting on our laurels. That's not what it is. But you can just be a little kinder to yourself along the way.
Kind of that you'll make it out alive no matter what.
For
Just,
sure. I
yeah.
mean, yeah, it's necessity, right? That teaches you resilience. You're not as resilient at 15 as you are at 35 because you haven't gone through as many hardships.
So, for anyone younger listening to this, there is no wisdom here. You just have to get through it,
Get
suffer
through
enough
it.
times,
Yeah.
get through, a life on the other side, sufficient number of times to just decide that that's just how the journey is. And that's part of the reason why I've started this podcast
Yeah.
to show the people what to expect on this journey, and just so it doesn't like rush you. It's not all rainbows and butterflies, and
Yeah.
at the same time, this is the best place to grow and learn something because there's always something to do. There's always somewhere to learn.
Exactly. And I feel like for all the listeners, if there's one takeaway from this conversation, it's exactly what Shamil is mentioning, which is you look at people who are quote unquote successful and you think, oh my God, they never had a bad day in their life. They never went through hardship. Every morning they woke up and they were successful. And that's just not true. And as soon as you know that, you think, oh, well, if they also went through those things, then I'm going to be fine.
Can you tell us about your first experience at a large company like IBM? That's one thing that it's a big. I'm still undecided as to like there are a lot of founders who just jump into building companies without having any prior experience of working for other companies, understanding the structure, the motivations, and how to manage all of this, and they just build things from what they perceive. And there are
Yeah.
other ones that take years to actually learn how businesses are built, how they operate, how you manage people, how you interact with them. And I want your perspective, like how much of that has shaped you, what has shaped you, like what kind of occurrences and how they played a role in your formation.
Yeah. Wow. Such a great question. I think I have so much respect for people who jumped right into the founder thing from the get go. I didn't have the confidence, the chutzpah, the insanity, whatever you want to call it.
Insanity is a good word.
It is part of it. It felt so out of reach at the time, and when I joined IBM, which was my first company out of school, to be honest, I had no marketable skills. Right, I was 21. I you know, had a lot of lofty goals, but no compass for how to achieve them. And so I actually credit IBM with giving me the space to learn how it is, what it means to be a professional, what it means to work in tech. Um, and because IBM is such a big company, I was able to do a lot of different things there. And it really was the springboard to where I ended up in my career today.
Is this the place where shaped your direction to being like a product manager guru?
Yes. Yes. I would love to tell you the story of how I became a product manager.
Please
Again,
do.
in the sake of transparency and for everybody to know that sometimes it's a right place, right time thing. So when I was hired at IBM originally, I was hired to do consulting. And it turns out I was not good at consulting. Maybe I wasn't on the right projects, maybe I wasn't hired in the right year, but I think what I always tell people is if you think something like consulting versus something like product management, they're about as 180 from each other as you can possibly get. In consulting, you're executing, right? Somebody gives you a task, you do the task. It can be a strategic task, but still, you are being given the prompt, you are returning a statement of work, and you never really get to see it through. And that drove me nuts. I wanted to be the one with the autonomy. And I think, maybe that's why consulting wasn't such a great fit to
Yeah.
me. In fact, it was such a bad fit that IBM came to me about a year in and said, Laura, we need you to do something else at this company. And how about product management? At the time, they were piloting an entry level product management sort of discipline within the company. And they were taking people from the consulting practice. We were really the guinea pigs to this new program. And I thought, I don't know what product management is. I don't know how to build software. I don't know anything about this, but I will do anything to get out of consulting. And so, obviously hindsight is 2020, but as soon as I started in product, I just absolutely fell in love with the building, the ability to create, the agency you have at such a junior level, right? Even if you're a junior PM, you're running a team. How many entry level people run teams?
Yeah.
You're responsible for the work output of 5 to 6 engineers, a designer, other folks on the team. That's a lot of responsibility. And so I think, the role is evolving so much day to day. I think even what it looks like today is very different than when I started almost 10 years ago at this point. But I always encourage young people, especially ones who aren't exactly sure what they want to do, to try product because it builds you such an amazing foundation to go on and do any other number of roles, either within or without the tech world.
How easy was it for you to compete with everyone else at IBM? Because you have an athlete background. Did that come into mind? Because like from what I know, athletes are the ones who know how to use discipline and know how to persevere like through pain uh, to achieve goals.
Yeah. Again, I think I always credit my athlete upbringing to the success that I've been able to achieve in my career. There's this stat; it keeps getting thrown around, and I'm gonna be wrong about the number, but I'm just gonna pick a number because I've seen probably 3 or 4 different
Yeah.
percentages. But women in leadership positions or C-suite positions, I think it's somewhere between 80 to 90% of them were college athletes. Um, so there's definitely something there in terms of, resilience and discipline,
Yeah.
but that doesn't have to come just from sports. It can come from music or theater or any hobby that you have. Just, sticking with something is what's important.
How did all of those skills that being an athlete gave you
Oh,
help
yes.
to nail the competition within IBM?
Yeah. One thing I will say is finding good mentors makes all the difference in your career. And often you just stumble upon them, right? In your day to day. Because when you're early in your career, you have a lot of energy, right? You want to work hard, you want to do well, but you don't know what the right things are to focus on, right? You don't know how to prioritize, you don't know how to spend your time, you don't know what matters and what doesn't. And that's where mentors come in. And I remember being at IBM and I was on this team and we were building this blockchain platform, which looking back on it is, again, I had no business doing anything like that. And my team of engineers, they actually sat in a different office than I did. I was in New York, in the city in Manhattan, and they sat in an office about a 40-minute train ride north of the city. And the first time I tried to get on a call with one of the engineers, their boss, the engineering manager, sort of the person who oversees the team of engineers, kind of came into the room and heard me asking this engineer questions. And he essentially shut it down. He said, "Don't bother my engineers, go do your thing and let me do mine." And I'm exactly,
You just
I'm
flew down there. There you go.
it felt like a virtual slap in the face. And I was, I'm 24, 25, right? I didn't know how to react to that. And I remember talking to my mentor about it and asking him, "What do I do here?" And he said, "Laura, get your butt on a train and go sit with them. Even if they tell you they don't want you there, go sit with them, become friends with them, ask them questions, be curious, and you'll figure it out." And so that's what I did for the next 12 months, twice a week. I would leave Manhattan on a train and I would go up to Yorktown Heights and I would sit with the engineers. And that's how I learned. And about a year into doing that, we were in this, big meeting with my boss and her. It was like, I don't even know how many layers of leadership at IBM were in this room because this was a pretty high profile product that we were building. And that same engineering manager who had essentially told me to leave his team alone stood up in this meeting and he said in front of all of these important people at IBM that ever since Laura had joined the team, things had gotten back on track. And
How did that feel?
it felt, I was so shocked, I nearly fell out of my chair first, but it was such a good, again, reminder of, again, I went out of my way, right? I got up and I went to the office, but it's really just the little things. You do the little things right, day over day, it adds up over time. It compounds over time. So don't be discouraged if you get a no. Don't feel like, "Oh my gosh, it's so onerous to make progress." Just do one little thing every day and you're going to get to where you want to be.
That kind of reminded me. I've had a similar conversation with a friend of mine who's practicing Stoicism.
Mm.
And there was one part which really stuck to me. I'm not like hugely in Stoicism, but some of the parts like focus on what you can control. Because you can control taking disciplined action
Hmm.
daily. You cannot control the result. You would not be able to control that lead engineer's reaction or how like, he speaks of you, but you can control showing up and actually
Hmm.
getting with the team. And I think it's a lot easier for founders to live life, like for anyone to live life, if they only focus on the things that they can actually control. And whatever happens afterwards is just, well, the universe will provide the
Yeah.
necessary lessons. And you've also talked about being in the right place in the right time.
Mm.
What is your relationship with luck?
Mm. There's a quote again. I'm not going to get it exactly right. I distinctly remember it being on a wall somewhere in my elementary school, and it's something to the extent of, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And I think that is the case, right? And what that means is that the harder you work and the more you put your hand up and the more you take that extra step, the more opportunities open to you. It's not always right away, right? And even thinking about, where I am now versus where I was a couple of years ago, I couldn't have foreseen the turn that my career and journey took. But I was putting in the work day after day, waking up excited, grinding, learning, and when you do those things, that's when doors open. So I think luck is really just a manifestation of hard work and timing is how that would be the equation if I had to write it out on a whiteboard.
Because for me, I don't know. I see so many people doing some sort of practices in their life, like meditation helps them
Mhm.
almost like align with the universe. I don't know. Maybe it's just the difference between people being spiritual. Do you consider yourself to be someone like spiritual or?
I can be a little earthy, definitely. And the again, the older I get, the more I think about the mind body connection, our connection to the earth, and how to stay grounded. Again, it's about how do you best prepare? How do you get your mind and body right so that you can work as hard as you can? And it's a delicate balance. And people like you and me and all these listeners on the call, often what happens is we push a little bit too hard. And over time, you have to learn where those lines are. And I had to learn over time, pushing yourself too hard is actually a disservice to your long-term career. And taking care of yourself in the day-to-day, whether that be meditation or working out or, you know, having a phone call with a friend, whatever those things are that bring you down and ground you are just as important as all of the other things. And you need that balance in order to have a sustainable and healthy, not just career, but life.
I see so many people just getting burnt out because
Yeah.
all they do is work. They don't do any exercise because, well, any hour you spend doing something else is an hour you don't spend working on your thing.
Mm.
Do you think that in order to be let's say, good and effective founder, an effective person like doing your craft, that you need to take care of like your energy levels in general, which derive from the exercise as well and meditation. Maybe you have some practices that help you stay on the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the rhetoric around this is changing in a good way. And I see it a lot in parenting too, right? My brother is a parent, a lot of my friends are parents, and it used to be, sacrifice, 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 and it's becoming a little bit more acceptable to say, okay, well, I'm actually a better parent if I do, exercise twice a week, which feels counterintuitive. And the same thing goes with career as well. And the mindset shift that I had was I now include those things that I need to stay grounded as part of, when I think about my blocks of work. So for me, exercise is key. I have to move my body. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. The amazing thing about living in New York City is you can walk everywhere. Sometimes that's sufficient. 10 minutes of stretching sometimes is all I have time to fit in, and that's good too. But yeah, considering those things, those pieces as part of the work will help, I think mentally will help you make space for them. Because you're right. If you work, work, work all the time, sure, maybe you can do that for a couple weeks, a couple months, maybe a couple years if you're really,
If you're young,
if you're young, but it will catch up with you, and then you end up in a worse position. It's like, what is that old fable? Like the tortoise and the hare,
yeah.
right? You think you're getting ahead, and maybe you are to some extent, but life is seasons. You have to think about the long term.
And have you ever struggled with being assertive?
Being assertive.
Yeah, in terms of a lot of people struggle with being able to show their aggression, and they oftentimes, when managing people, they're trying to be nice
Mm,
because you want to be liked by everyone. But in order to make that shift to where you orient yourself with the results of the business, you're gonna have
yes.
to start caring more about business and being kind of like a kind person rather than a nice person.
Yeah,
Is that something that?
for sure. Yeah, that's something I'm still learning, and it is one of the most important skills you can develop. Um, it didn't come naturally to me on both sides. I think receiving feedback also didn't come naturally to me, but again, having that mindset shift of, okay, the more I fail, the more I learn. Therefore, I'd rather know. Tell me what I'm not doing well, I'll do it better. And the same thing goes with your team. There's this amazing book, came out a couple years ago, Radical Candor, and I think it's probably the best illustration of what is that line you walk between being clear and being firm, but not being mean, right?
Yeah.
And it depends on the person, right? I manage a team of 6, and everybody responds to feedback differently. But I think the best achievers, right? The people who are eager to do well, they love it. They respond to the challenge. And I always try to encourage it or frame it in that way, which is, hey, this is something you can work on. This is an opportunity for you. How amazing is this, right? Something that you can action on to get better. And again, I've been saying this, I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but it's all about the mindset shift. How do you share information? How do you kind of portray things to your team in a way that excites them to do better? Um, but yeah, it's a delicate balance.
And before we move on to your journey at HelloFresh and Factor Form, could you give a bit of advice, maybe sharing from your perspective? Everyone says you need to find mentors, you need to find people, who can talk to you. But at the same time, I see a lot of people struggle to answer the question like, oh, but who can be my mentor? Who do I reach out to? My friends, somebody who's like 1,000 miles away in terms of their journey, or somebody at the
Mm.
same level as me. Uh, what could you advise to people in terms of like who to look
Yeah,
for and how to reach out to them?
it's a great question. And mentors is a tricky one because it you can't force it, right? I think sometimes, we would all love for, I don't know, Tom Brady. I would love for Tom Brady to be my mentor, right?
Not bad.
But he's probably not a great mentor for me because we don't have anything in common career-wise. We don't have other ties. We don't have shared experiences. And so I think with mentors, it's a little art and a little science. Typically, I think the best mentor relationships are the ones that happen more organically. So somebody you're kind of at work who's maybe a little bit more senior than you, but doesn't isn't your direct manager. That's probably the best place to start. I would say somebody at your company, not in your direct team, but somebody you look up to or maybe work tangentially with, who you have good rapport with. Um, and look, being a mentor is an incredible, amazing thing. And people are very willing to do it as long as you ask, whether that be, an email, you find them in the office. And if you want a mentor who's not at your company, if you feel very strongly like X person is going to be an amazing asset to me, um, making it as simple as possible for the other person who you're asking to be your mentor. So whether that be in the email, explain this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Do you feel like this is something you could help me with? Again, because everybody's busy and people want to help. But if you put too much of the onus on them to figure out how to be your mentor, it's probably not going to be as great of a fit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sort of very similar to the feedback I give to younger guys. And the thing is, a lot of people would be surprised as to how how often people would say yes,
Hmm.
and it's something that would benefit them as well. That they would love to, share, feel value for their own experience that they have to share with somebody.
Absolutely.
Okay, slowly getting to the factor form. Can you tell us about how did you come to join HelloFresh? Because it's a big change from like IBM. If you look at international business machines, they're like technology everywhere, working with IBM Watson, like a state of cutting edge of technology,
Yeah.
going towards something which is a lot more down to earth, kind of more practical, maybe I would say.
Yeah, a little bit more tangible,
Tangible,
perhaps.
yeah, that's the word.
Yeah, that's the word. Again, much like most things in my career, again, for the sake of transparency, it was a bit of an accident. I left IBM and I joined a health tech startup in New York in April of 2020, just as COVID was hitting, which was an insane time to make any move. Was there for a bit and then I got laid off. I joined another startup in the health tech space. On day one, I realized it wasn't the right fit for me. And so I just kept on
What
interviewing. And
happened? How did you identify, like, okay, that's not the place?
it felt a lot of the processes and the culture that I had left IBM for or because of, I saw reflected in this new company. And
What
it just
culture is that?
it wasn't what I wanted. It was the business was it was a B2B software company, and B2B versus B2C, just totally different. Your buyers and your users are not the same people. So everything from how you build software to how you sell it to how you build a business is different. And I was dead set on wanting to be in D2C.
Yeah.
So as soon as I joined, I thought, okay, I need to, I'm going to need to make another move. So it was a bit of a tumultuous year, but as I was looking to make another move in this crazy year, I was chatting with a former colleague from IBM who had ended up at HelloFresh, and Shamil, he was having so much fun. You could just see it in his face that he loved what he was working on. And at that point, I was so tired and I was so sick of interviewing. I thought, I just want to be somewhere where the people are having a good time, where the
Yeah.
culture is really strong, where there's a lot of agency to grow and try things. And I really trusted this colleague of mine. He'd been a product manager at IBM with me. So I took a leap. I said, all right, I'm gonna try HelloFresh. Let's see what happens. I thought I would do it for a year and then kind of move on to something else. I just really wanted to get that direct to consumer experience on my resume because I was finding it difficult to make the B2B to B2C transition in
Yeah.
product. And as soon as I got to HelloFresh, it just really felt like an amazing fit. And, you know, the
What
rest
was it
is
like?
history.
Like coming from like a corporate world into something that like did you see where like you actually want to
Mhm.
talk to the users and the users are not some corporate like other corporate people. These are
Yeah.
people who consume the products.
I loved it. I love direct to consumer. I love being humbled by customers day in and day out. You come up with an amazing feature idea. You think, oh my gosh, this is going to change everybody's life. And then you run a user test, and the person is like, I don't see a button.
Yeah.
And you think, well, okay. That didn't go as expected, but it's so awesome. It's so awesome to have that connection with your customers and really think about the psychology of it all. That's what I love about direct to consumer and feature building and all of that. Yeah, it was amazing. I The culture at HelloFresh is so special. They're a German company,
Mhm.
which a lot of people don't realize. Their headquarters are in Berlin, and so there's a lot of European influences in the company, which
Mhm.
I think give a very nice balance. Um,
What
but the
is the
people,
European influence for everybody sitting in Europe, for example? And they're like, what's the European influence?
the biggest one that sticks out to me, Shamil, is one of the tenants at HelloFresh. One of the DNA values is called egoless environment. The company is so data driven and very focused on analytics and results that it takes the ego out of decision making. It doesn't matter if it was Laura's idea or Shamil's idea. What matters is, did it prove results? And it just makes it a lot easier to work. At least I found in those types of environments because it's not personal. We all are working towards the same goal and we have the tools with data and analytics and, hypothesis driven experimentation to know that we're going in the right direction.
Because I would always get a sense that US is all about competition, working hard, working
Yeah.
6 days a week, 7 days, and then when
Grinding.
you look at Europe, I was like, should we make Friday a vacation day as well, and maybe like a 5 hour day, work day? So I thought maybe you were talking about some kind of like a better life work balance.
Yeah, they do. They work hard in Berlin. I was hoping there would be some of that, and certainly, I think this is an investment banking, but yeah, yeah. Just I think people, we've talked so much, Shamil, about this mindset of who you are and what you do being separate, related, but they're not the same thing. And in Berlin and in Europe in general, they know that. They're like, we know if this doesn't go well, we're going to go ahead and try something else. But they don't put all of their self worth into their job, which I think is very healthy.
I just need a second to think about that because I haven't taken that perspective. Um, a lot of the people I know just destroy themselves. Like even if it's a brick wall, they would continue hitting because, well, that's my identity. Like
Exactly.
that's who I am. And I noticed a lot of founders who kind of build large companies and then sell them. They
Yep.
exit and then they're faced with, okay, who am I without that identity of
Yeah.
founder of that company? And this is a scary process that can take, like, on average, from what I hear, like 5 to 10 years to go through
Hmm.
and rediscover yourself.
Yeah.
Have you ever asked yourself that question? Like, who is Laura if not a product manager, solving nutrition supplementation
Yeah.
problems? What kind of
Absolutely.
answers do you get?
It's something that I grappled with pretty early. Again, going back to IBM, I remember this, high profile product piece of software we were building. And I remember looking at our P&L, essentially what was the forecast for the revenue we had expected to deliver for the year versus where we landed, which was nowhere near it in year one. Business cases are
Classic.
a little art and science, right? We all know that. And this was kind of the first time I'd ever seen a P&L, and I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to get fired? Are we going to, are they going to close up shop? And I remember calling my dad and saying, what do I do? I'm 24. I don't want this. I don't want my career to be over.
I think we're going back and bankrupt. What's going on?
I'm like, I need to find a new job. And he said to me, Laura, work is what you do. It's not who you are. And so, again, the older I get in my career, the more tenured, the more I recognize, yes, I am, a founder and a CEO of a brand. I am a product manager by training, but I'm a friend, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm somebody who people can rely on. I'm, a tennis enthusiast. And all of these things are important too. And, even if the business takes a nosedive or you get laid off, you don't lose the essence of who you are. And that's a good thing.
And then we get to the factor form, where it's the first time you've taken yourself into the shoes of a CEO, taking the full responsibility for the
Mhm.
outcome. How did that feel? How was your experience overall so far?
Listen, let me tell you, it ain't easy, but isn't that fun? I will be super honest here. When we first launched, the first few months that the business was live, every day I felt like somebody's foot was on my neck. I felt the weight of the responsibility. It's a lot. Um, and thinking about how lucky I am to be incubated within a company like Factor, which not only has resources, but also has mentors and people who can support me. And I look at founders who are doing this completely solo on their own, and I just utmost respect to people who do it that way because it's not easy and it's very lonely. And in those early days, especially because I don't have a co founder, it's just me, get a co-founder. Get somebody who can help just carry the load for you. But if you are a solo founder like me, massive respect. Make sure you have community in whatever that means. If it's a peer advisory group, if it's a mentor, if it's a group of friends that you can confide in, you're going to need support because as much as you feel like you can lean on your team, it's not the same. They're not in it the same as you are when you're the one who's the founder or the leader or the CEO, whatever it may be. And you're going to need that support to get through the day to day.
And what group did you find for yourself? Was it
Yeah.
like founders in New Jersey? Or
uh, yeah, a great question. Again, I'm very lucky that there's a bunch of other brands kind of under my parent company. And so there are a bunch of other founders and general managers who are going through a lot of the same things that I am. But I also joined a community it's actually ex athletes here in New York. And there's a peer advisory group component to it. And that was part of the reason I joined was I just needed people I could be honest around and be vulnerable around and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or
yeah.
I had a really hard day about something. And, you don't want to put all that burden on your team. And it's been incredibly helpful to have just another outlet for those types of things.
And how often do you feel like, okay, things are going well, like things are going as planned, like in terms of percentage of like the overall like days, let's put them in days. What percentage would you say like this is like 5% of the time it's a good day, things are going well?
Ooh, that's a good question. There have been some dark days. Let's say 50. 50.
50.
Sometimes, yeah. Is that good?
That is
Okay.
fantastic.
Maybe it's low.
The last time
We're,
I fasted it was 15%.
I was thinking 10 originally, so maybe it's lower than that. But hey, this is true with everybody. Everybody feels this, right? How often do we look back on a day and say, you know what? Two thumbs up. It's part of the process.
And that's another thing of like finding the peer group is unless
Yep.
you're willing to be vulnerable,
Mhm.
then you're gonna feel lonely because you'll only be able to interact with people who are like, hey, this is the best day, and they only post on LinkedIn once a week during like the hype of like, okay, something went well. They're like, yeah, let's
Exactly.
post about that. Everything's going great. But they're missing out on so much like authentic connection over like that's what it is. That's life. Entrepreneurship. Like you have shit hit the fan almost like every week, twice maybe, where you have to make decisions because it's not just about like the product or like the users. It's also about the people working for you, navigating that kind of conflict. A lot like you have to be a psychologist, like a mentor for people, and at the same time think about the P&L and then the product market fit and like there are just so many things that you have to juggle.
So many.
And what are some of the hardest decisions they had to make as a CEO so
Mm.
far? What's been hardest for you?
Shamil, they're always people related. Those are the hardest
I
decisions.
feel you. I feel you.
Yeah. It's always the hardest because especially, good leaders care about their teams and their people, right? And I think starting out, this has been one of my biggest learnings is your team is not your family, right? It's not personal, it's business.
It takes so much experience to be able to say that. Like so many people don't get that. And they start, yeah.
It is tough. And maybe you get it one day and then you forget it the next. It's ever evolving, but um, you have to think about it from the mindset of the collective. Okay, so a mentor told me this once. I'll share this because it really struck me, and hopefully it will strike or help some of you. This was the light bulb moment for me that helped me make that shift. He said to me, he said, Laura, everybody on your team knows who the weakest link is. And when he said that, it was like 10 light bulbs went off in my head. And I thought, oh my gosh, first of all, that's so true. How often have we been on teams? Even when you're super junior, everybody knows. Everybody knows who isn't pulling their weight. And if everybody knows, then me as the leader, I'm letting the whole team down. I'm affecting negatively the entirety of the team. And thinking about that and remembering my own experiences on teams when I was junior and there was somebody who's just dragging the team down. And listen, it's not intentional. It's not like people are bad actors necessarily, but you have to think about the collective. You have to think about, how do I maintain the health of this team? And also sometimes for individuals, them staying on teams isn't always the best thing for them either, right? Everybody wants to feel good and like they're pulling their weight and they're a high performer. And sometimes you have to let people go so that they can go and find that as well. But it's not easy.
That is actually a very powerful way to state everybody in your team already knows who the weakest link is. And the
Hmm.
thing that I oftentimes found that helped me was I believe that it's all about the culture. Like maybe not all, but it's a lot about the culture. And there are cultures where it's okay to not try to be your best every day to, deliver results, run, run, run. Maybe some companies are okay to just take it chill. And maybe there are places for people like that where they will feel at home. They won't be like a stress and they'll enjoy the part of their life that they're devoting to their
Mm,
professional life as well.
yeah. And the the thing that or the way that I like to frame those conversations is I believe the best in people. So I believe that there is a correct role for every person in which they're going to be the best, right? And so maybe it's not the role that they're in, right? So I've said to people before, I've said, look, if this is what you're really good at. If I had a role on my team that was perfectly tailored to those things, I would put you in that role and you would be successful. But I don't have that role on my team, or the role that you're in requires X, Y, and Z other things. And I found that's a really helpful way to frame it to the underperformer as well, which is it's not it's not like a black and white thing. It's a fit thing. It's a puzzle piece thing. It has to
Yeah.
work on multiple facets. And again, it takes the fear away from it, and then it becomes more of, you're right. Everybody deserves to be in a role that's right for them, and sometimes you got to try a few things in order to find that.
And do you trust your gut feeling in terms of these things? Like, if somebody
Yeah.
comes in and they're just like first like time on the job, and you get in a call with them, or you're in a meeting, and like 2 minutes in, you're like, maybe I just need to give them another 2 weeks, to kind of get. But I'm not feel like, in your experience, did you get to like, I should trust my gut feeling, or is it like sometimes it's okay to take it slow?
Always trust your gut. I think sometimes we second guess ourselves, right? We think, no, let's give it more time, or maybe I'm over. No, your intuition knows. I find that it can be difficult to articulate. I think that's why it's hard for us to trust our intuition, which is, I can't explain to you why I don't have a good feeling yet, or why I have a great feeling about this person. Um, but in my experience, your intuition is typically right. And if you're unsure about somebody, let's put it this way, if you're not over the moon about somebody, about a candidate in the interview process, my mother always used to say this to me. Always said, Laura, maybe means no.
And
Yeah.
it's important to put emphasis on this, because like
Mhm.
even I get faced with this a lot. Every time like making a new hire, sometimes you see them work for 2 weeks and you're like, I don't know, but let's give them some time. They seem to be like just getting accustomed, because sometimes you think, okay, it's only been like 10 days. Like,
Mhm.
what can a person do within 10 days? But also the gut feeling. I've learned from a book, I think it was Winning by Jack Welch, from G.
Mhm.
And I think another book of his was about the gut feelings, like trust your gut.
Yep.
And it's something that I'm coming to terms with too. And with the industry that you're in, I know a lot of people, probably like somebody who's with kind of like tech and AI, they don't understand how difficult the supplementation industry is. Like if you look, for example, maybe a lot of people will know a brand called Golly gummies.
Mhm.
Who've even had
Mhm.
Jennifer Lopez as like one of their ambassadors,
Yep.
which went bankrupt within 3 years, leaving a huge hole in the industry.
Uh-huh.
What have you learned about like making supplements business work? Because I've had 2.5 years of experience building a supplements business in Ukraine, and I've noticed that if you see everyone else advertising a lot and you see like adverts, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're like things are going great. Sometimes the
Yep.
more advertising you see, it means there is a lot of desperation on the market as well, like the offers and everything you see. What has your experience been so far?
Yeah. Supplements is a wild ride. Making supplements is very different than selling supplements. That's what I'll say. I think the brands that do well are the ones that build the best stories. They have the best unique, human personal touches that resonate with people. Because, and this is true of all businesses, the lower the barriers of entry to a business, think about supplements. Let's take electrolytes, if you
Yeah.
will. Electrolytes is, salt, magnesium, so a little bit of flavor, maybe 10 ingredients. Any person can develop an electrolyte formula with a co-man, slap a label on it, and sell it to customers. And so when the barriers of entry are low, the marketing competition high, 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 high.
Yeah.
And this is true with any business, not just supplements. And so making sure you know what is your niche, what is your story, getting super specific about what that is. And when you look at the winning brands in the last couple of years, obviously AG1, and now we have Grüns, the gummy brand, Create, the creatine gummies, the ones who stay super laser focused on what it is that they're trying to achieve and the story that they're trying to tell and the persona they're trying to attract. Those are the ones that make it big.
I keep seeing more ads on AG1. They've now added 5 extra packs of drug travel packs, and they also have a bag. And I'm like, ooh, things might be going really bad. Like trying to get them. But I noticed with marketing and advertising,
Mm.
because when you're a product person, you listen to the people and then you try to build and give them exactly what they're asking for. But when it comes to spreading the word about your product, getting people to trust and love you and use you for their daily lives. Before, maybe like 2012, 15, it was enough
Yeah.
to just run Google ads and Facebook ads and people would know about you.
No.
Then it kind of switched to influencer marketing. So we now have like, you need like the most popular people on like TikTok, like athletes
Mhm.
everywhere to show that it's not just us who like the brand. And now they're also moving towards an AI created like, well, you can create personas on AI holding your product and
Uh-huh.
advertising. What is going on in the marketing right now in the US?
That is a great question. Honestly, I came from tech, I came from product. Marketing is insane. It's like being in Las Vegas and you're just playing slot machines. That's how it feels. Um, it's incredible. The euphoria of running paid marketing is addictive. That's what I'll say about marketing. But I'm so curious how AI is going to shape the future of marketing because, again, we think about when you lower barriers to entry, when a thing becomes ubiquitous,
Yeah.
right? So now everybody can create a video with an AI persona talking about their product. That's going to become, I think, much, much, much harder to stand out if everybody is doing the same thing. I actually think, especially in this world of AI, we're going to swing back to celebrity and authenticity. And who are people with real credibility? Again, influencers are going to continue to stay super relevant. Hopefully, the mechanics change, but people are looking for trust and proof, and they're going to get that in trusted sources, whether that be influencers, whether that be athletes, as you mentioned, or when I say celebrity, I mean people of note, people that others look up to. So I am curious how this swing is going to go, because if everything is equalized for people, then it's going to require something else to stand out in the market. It's crowded out there. And one of the other things, Shamil, that I'm excited about is, again, if everybody's on an even playing field digitally, and I've been reading a couple of articles about this concept and having conversations recently, I think experiential marketing is going to become really big. And that's, community based events, things that are in person, pop ups, those types of things, because we're lonely. We want to connect with other people and with brands, and we want to feel connections. And I think those are the types of things that are going to become more and more important. Now they're difficult because it's hard to measure, right?
And scaling
Attribution,
as well.
scaling is hard, But again, it's, if everybody's doing the same things, it's going to be the brands that are doing different things that are going to be successful.
Well, I guess this is going to be a challenge for the marketing managers, marketing and sales teams
Yeah.
within companies. Because I like the online advertising because of how easy it is to scale. You just pick a new geography and then you
Mhm.
take your best creatives and test them and see which one has the lowest per click uh,
Yep.
to buy. And then now in the future, we have to think about like a lot of other variables coming into the question.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what do the next 5 to 10 years look like for Laura?
Oh my gosh. I like to ask myself this, and I say it out loud to people, and they laugh at me, but I think it's important, which I say, what am I going to be when I grow up? Because I don't know. And part of it is staying curious to what's coming. If you had told me 5 years ago that I was going to be, founding and running as a supplement company, I would have thought you were crazy. 5 years ago, my 5-year plan was probably to be a head of product. And now that feels too small of a job. And that's only been 5 years, who knows what the next five are going to bring. But I I recently did this workshop with a former NFL player, awesome, awesome guy. And one of the quotes that he said that really resonated with me that I want to share with all of you is play a bigger game. You know, don't think about, okay, I want to, yeah, think about, okay, I want to get promoted, I want to move up, I want to do this, that, and the other thing. But if you set a bigger game for yourself, you're going to be way more motivated to get after it and stick with it. And that's a lot of, you know, 5-year plans or achieving ambitions or, where you end up. A lot of it comes down to what are you doing in your day to day? Are you excited? Are you passionate? Are you working towards things? And I remember talking with this girl, sorry for all of my side
I don't know.
tangent
That's
stories, um, many, many years ago when I was interviewing. I ended up at HelloFresh, but I was in that interviewing period, and she was telling me that, she was looking for a new role because she felt like in her current role, she had stopped learning. And so often we're slow to pick up on that, right? We're kind of on autopilot, we're going around, we're doing our thing, smooth sailing, and then you wake up one morning and you think, I haven't really learned anything new in 6 months, a year, 2 years. And so that's why I think staying open, staying curious, as we had talked about earlier, Shamil, with, luck. You never know when it's going to strike. You never know when the timing is going to be right, but you want to be ready. You want to be ready, and so do things that you're passionate about. And it doesn't all have to be so prescriptive and so work related of, okay, I'm going to read 3 articles a day and I'm going to learn how to code. No, do things that excite you. Go visit art museums or learn French. Or I'm a huge believer that flexing different kinds of muscles um, pays dividends in the end. There was this study that came out recently about um, athletes, and when young kids do multiple sports longer, right? I think a lot of people specialize quite early these days, but if you hold off on specializing, so not just swimming, as which is what I did, but I also played lacrosse and, soccer and what have you, they actually are more successful because you're forced to learn different skills for longer. And the same thing goes career wise too. So chase your passions, take that French class, learn how to cook. All of these things will contribute in ways that are hard to see.
oh wow. And this fantastic note, I believe that this is a pod. I want to thank you so much for joining me, for sharing so much. Really, like even I came up with so many like ideas and so much thinking to do over the weekend now. I want to thank you so much for bringing your most authentic and vulnerable self. And I think a lot my our listeners will really appreciate and be able to connect to those stories because I really believe that every single person is going through some parts of the journey you've described. So thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Of course, and thank you so much, Shamil, for sharing your stage with me. I think your podcast is so incredible. It gives, a peek under the hood at what founders are up to, and it's so inspiring to everybody, and gives everybody the courage to go after their own dreams as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.